The seatbelt sign. The seatbelt sign is on. There's no room in the overhead. Actually, there is no room in the overhead compartments. We're totally full. This is so exciting.
Full house, full hearts, empty mind.
You said empty mind. You looked at me. You know me well enough? This is. Thank you. I'm going to talk for maybe 3 to 4 minutes and then probably not talk for the rest of the time, because if you bought a ticket to come to South by Southwest to hear me talk instead of Paul or Julie, you need psychedelic assisted therapy. Which could be a way to, increase the market size. Thanks for everyone for coming. I actually got personally shut out of Paul's talk yesterday. I was so excited. And I saw all these people in line, and I thought to myself, well, at least we'll have somebody come see us today. And I'm really happy to see everybody. How many people were at yesterday's talk? I'm just curious. Oh, okay, good. All right. How many people were shut out? Okay. So I'm gonna do some introductions, because if I let Paul and Julie introduce themselves, they probably won't be as kind to themselves as I might be as a fanboy. So I'm Daniel Goldberg. I'm a co-founder of Palo Santo. We're a venture capital fund focused on psychedelic therapeutics. We did have kind of a busy day yesterday. There was a small banking crisis going on, apparently. I don't know who's in bad shape. We have no idea. We're calling around. But it's very interesting, because I think this is the moment right now, one of many, where if you are from, and I'm going to poke fun of my friends in LA and Austin specifically, that maybe say money is energy or energy is money, that's not going to fly with Silicon Valley Bank. And I might be making light of it. This is a moment where, you may want to check in with your friends who are in business, because it's a very scary thing. So I'm just gonna put that right there. What that really means is I had no time to prepare. I went to the pool and I wrote up some notes. I'm gonna say them, and then I'm gonna pass it over to Paul and Julie. So I am a bit less organized than usual because of yesterday, and it's a juxtaposition to my co-founder Tim Schlid, who had a panel a couple hours ago, which was brilliant, who's incredibly organized. This may feel a little bit more like a psilocybin journey in its scope. So his was called To Trip or Not to Trip, and it was with some of the OGs in psychedelic science. I just want to call out a few things. We heard from, among others, David Nichols, who mentioned he's pretty much unparalleled in the history of psychedelic science, and Dave reminded us that we lost decades of progress during Nixon's drug war. And this field today, I'm lucky enough to have been welcomed into a few years ago, may seem a bit tribal at times. There's a lot of I was here first, I notice. And there are many elders in the space that I'm not pointing at you, because you'll see where I'm going here, that may be a bit scared of where we're going and what all this means. But in my opinion, the train has left the station, and we're very lucky to have so many elders in the psychedelic movement. By the way, I'm sorry if I'm calling you either of you an elder. I'm 50. You're not sorry.
I don't like where any of this is going.
All right, ready? It's almost over. Welcoming new voices, new talent, new ideas to advance their work to the next level. And no one represents that kind of inclusivity? Is that a word? And generosity more than Paul Stamets and Julie Highland. You're in for a treat. Julie is, if you don't know her, and now you do, is a psychiatrist, psychopharmacologist, all one word, not psycho and pharmacologist, psychopharmacologist, author, and has been one of the more important advocates for the psychedelic movement. All around, one of the coolest people you'll meet in this space. I actually wrote that down because I was afraid I missed that. And the vast majority of the time, she doesn't even let it get to her head. And Paul, it feels like an understatement to call Paul Stamets the world's most famous mycologist. He is an author, medical researcher, and an entrepreneur, an intellectual, and industry leader in fungi, habitat, medicinal use, and production. Today, Paul is a bit of a rock star. His message resonates with new audiences all the time. He's brought what most people would think of as an esoteric topic to life. And when I listen to him speak, I personally get filled with a sense of hope, optimism, and also I love that there's always a call to action, which is very, very meaningful. Okay, why are we talking about psychedelics in the media? Undoubtedly, the movies and books over the past 5 years brought in audiences we could have never imagined. That's where I found my entry into this space. And I'm going to turn it over, but real quick, bullet speed. Raise your hands if you've seen Fantastic Fungi. Okay, and raise your hands if you've seen How to Change Your Mind on Netflix, and if you've read the book, if you've read the book. Everyone lies about reading books. Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, the series. Dosed, From Shock to Awe. Have a Good Trip. Psychedelia, The History of Science and the Mystical. Nine Perfect Strangers. Why did that get in there? Reefer Madness. What? Books. Okay, Doors of Perception. Ayala Waldman, Really Good Day. I'm almost done. Julie Holland, Good Chemistry. Raise your hands. Everyone raise your hands. And the last one, Mycelium Running. You're in trouble. All right. So I'm going to pass this over to you guys. That was the longest intro you'd ever expect, but I wanted to set it up. Paul, what did this all mean to you when did that shift feel? Paul, I'm going to start with you. Julie's like a co-moderator. I have questions for Julie, but she's going to come up with some content too. But Paul, I am very curious because you've been in this for decades. I think you wrote. Did you write your first book in 1976? Is that right?
Well, I started my first book when I was 19, and it was published in 1978, 45 years ago. Psilocybe Mushrooms and Their Allies, which is I studied taxonomy, created taxonomic keys. On the Stropharia it's a family that contains 3 genera: Stropharia, Psilocybe, and Hypholoma or Nematoloma. These are all sister species. This is why it was called Stropharia cubensis, then it became Psilocybe cubensis. Stropharias have an annulus, a ring on the stem. So, yes, I started very young. Most people know the story. My brother John inspired me, and then my friend Ryan's father found my brother John's book, Altered States of Consciousness, and burned it, and that really inspired me when I was 14 to take up the subject. And I wanted to impress my brother John, and he came back from Colombia and Mexico with amazing tripping stories, and I was 14 years of age. He went to Yale, so he was part of his training there, so to speak. But let me just put this in. We're talking about the media and films and books. What are these? These are stories. These are narratives. And indigenous cultures through millennia, these stories, have been told and retold generationally, passing on knowledge. We have new media to tell these stories. We have the internet, we have books, we have, films, etc. But the songs and the legends and the tales that were told over generations were the media of those times. So I feel, for myself, and I think I can include Julie on this, is that we are voices today who are we're in a long lineage of experts, of psychedelic experts that are carrying this knowledge forward. What's unique about psilocybin mushrooms, to put it in perspective, and I mentioned this yesterday, we only know which mushrooms are edible or poisonous from the people who've eaten them before us. So that's true with plants. That's true with frogs. Some frogs are edible, some are deadly poisonous. And so what's unique about mushrooms is how ephemeral they are. They're only in your viewscape for a few days and they rot. Whereas animals and plants are in your viewscape, in your event horizon constantly. You see them frequently. And so you have a familiarity factor. With familiarity, you have confidence in whether they're friend or foe and how to deal with them. With mushrooms that come up, some can feed you, some can kill you, some can heal you, some can send you on a spiritual journey, and they disappear for a year. What was that? Or for several years. And so the cognoscenti in indigenous cultures that were experts, mycologists, and I really like to give a shout out to Maria Sabina and especially Valentina Wasson also. Both these women, Maria Sabina was a shaman, everyone knows that, and maybe people don't know Valentina Wasson was a Russian doctor, but they indeed were mycologists. They could go into the wilds, into the woods, into the fields, and find mushrooms and be able to safely identify many of them. Now, there's over 14,000 species identified in a genome of over 150,000 estimated, in a kingdom of about 2 million fungi. most of which have not been identified. So it's not like they knew every mushroom, but they knew enough to be able to collect them and give them in ceremony or medicinally. And so these two women are really the pioneers that just catalyzed this movement to bring it to us today. So I feel like I shepherd this responsibility, being a powerful voice in this time. But in 1975, when I attended my 1975, I attended my first mycological congress. There was a photograph I think someone showed. I had really long hair and a really long beard. I went through puberty really early, really early. So when I went to these congresses and whatnot, I was treated like a leper. I kid you not. I walk into a crowd of people, and it's like there was this a force field of repulsion. And there would be like a circle of 20 feet away from me. Whenever I walk up to a group of people, they would distance themselves, fearful that I was interested in magic mushrooms. That confirmed their fears. But fortunately, Dr. Daniel Stamets, the University of Washington, because I was very interested in taxonomy, and they were surprised constantly to be confronted with psilocybin mushrooms. He had studied mushrooms for 40, 50 years before I met him, had never seen these psilocybin mushrooms, and suddenly they're everywhere. And it's because of wood chipping, landscaping in the 60s, in particular, using decorative bark around buildings. And then when everyone went to Mexico, and there are some psilocybin mushrooms are rare, but liberty caps were fairly well known, but they were hard to identify as well for many mycologists even, because they don't bruise bluish. Most of the psilocybin mushrooms are purple round spores and they bruise bluish. Liberty caps do not. They grow in pastures. And so when Dr. Daniel Stamets realized that I had embedded myself into the subject, and when going to libraries, I couldn't find many of the references. You go to the bibliographies, all of you know this, you look at the bibliographies, the references, you find a reference, oh, I'm going to look up that reference. And you couldn't find them because all the books in the libraries, the papers have been razored out with anything on psilocybin mushrooms. So I went to Daniel Stamets saying, I need this reference, this reference, this reference. And he's going, wow, this guy's pretty learned about this subject. And so he took me into his private library at the University of Washington botany department. And so I spent many, many hours. I joined the Pacific Northwest Key Council. They elected me as vice president of the Key Council, which is a great honor for me, my first being elected into a group. And I led, there was about 40 or 50 of us that were writing taxonomic keys to
literally
mushroom
I'm sorry, Paul. I think your time might be up. I'm not sure what's going on. That's all the time we have today. I'm using my psychiatrist voice. Can you tell?
Okay, I think I'll stop there. I think
do you have a clip? Do you have a clip to show? Is that why it got dark in here?
No, there's no clip.
I said, do you have a clip to show, or did it just get dark in here for fun?
No, I think somebody's leaning against the light switch.
This is not me.
If anyone's leaning against any light switches, thank you for unleaning. Should we just continue even though we're all seeing the dark? That'll be fun.
Mics are working. Oh, and the journey, and you should be coming out of the trip right about now. How is it? That's about it.
Okay, I think I'll stop. That's a good time. I thought it was a signal for me to stop.
No, she was joking. I don't know. It was
okay. So, I think that was my beginning, and then I had some heroic journeys, and I think a lot of us. I always like to ask, and this is going to be a fun question to ask this audience: how many people in this audience have not tripped on psilocybin mushrooms? 7, 8, 9, maybe 10. 10 out of 250. You're a minority. I'm so glad I mentioned that, because I do want to mention one other thing. In innovation, and this is very much one of the epiphanies that I've had, and it's not a big one, folks, everyone sort of knows this, it's so important to protect the minorities and minorities of opinion. It's the minorities of opinion that drive innovation, not conventional wisdom. It's the edge runners, the people who push the envelope, the people who are different, the people who are strange, the people who may be alien to your religion or what you're used to. They're outside of your comfort range. But when you think about the giant leaps in science, and exploration, it is always the edge runners, the minority of people that push the envelope. And so I'm a blend of being a liberal and a conservative. I'm a conservative in many ways. But conservatives want to conserve, supposedly, traditionally, the safeguards that have gotten them to where they are. They feel safe, it's insecure. Well, the people who are on the margins, who are pushing the envelopes, are challenging to the safety net that's been created by conventional wisdom, religion, etc. So this is really a shout out to everyone who are minorities racially, culturally, sexually. We need you. You are the vanguard of innovation that has propelled our societies into the future. So all of you who feel marginalized, from my point of view, you are the great heroes of this movement. You're the ones who are leading the way by your courage and the fact that you are different. I'll stop there.
Thank you. All right, Julie, how many more people have been brought into this movement since, say, 2017 or 18, right, on a percentage basis? And the messaging, right, from the media, from the movies, I'm talking about the really, we're talking Joe Rogan, Fantastic Fungi, these huge outlets, right, of storytelling. And I'm curious, has your messaging changed since, say, 2017?
No.
And how do you feel about it?
Here's my short answer is no. My messaging hasn't changed since 1985.
Yeah.
My messaging, when we first learned about HIV in 85, I wrote papers about giving condoms to everybody, giving clean needles to everybody. This seems like it's the very least we can do. And at that time, I was a vanguard, and a lot of people were not comfortable with what I was saying. And then I experienced MDMA for the first time in 1985, and I went on television talking about it, like a local morning show, AM Philadelphia. And that was not my first exposure to media, but it's always been my goal to educate about the potential of the drug and the harm associated, and it's always going to be that balance. And there is a little pendulum swinging, but lately things have been swinging toward transgressions and us talking about those transgressions and boundary violations. People in a very vulnerable state when they are tripping, and it's important that the people around them are trustworthy and, dare I say, even sort of have good energy or auras about them. So I'm always happy to focus on harm reduction, but why are we talking about this? Because there's a lot of potential, because there's a lot of benefit. My first book back in 2001 was about MDMA. It was called Ecstasy, The Complete Guide, and that's a nonprofit book to fund MDMA research. And then I did a book called The Pot Book, Complete Guide to Cannabis, also nonprofit funding clinical research. My most recent book is about psychedelics, and I'm actually doing a book signing right after this, right down the hall.
We'll do one of it. This is...
So
yeah.
if anybody, this is a great book, if I do say so myself. It's called Good Chemistry, The Science of Connection from Soul to Psychedelics. And there's plenty of harm reduction in there, but there's also plenty of sort of proselytizing about connection and the sort of fundamental benefits to your body and your mind that come from being connected, feeling you're part of something bigger than you, feeling like everything is connected. And these are the kind of experiences you can have with psychedelics, is a sense of connection. You can, don't forget cannabis is a psychedelic, so even like a little tiny bit of cannabis, and you might find that you feel more connected to your own body or to nature. And if you have a slightly larger dose, you may feel connected to the universe. And certainly if you have larger doses of psychedelics, you're gonna have that sense of everything being connected, of being part of something bigger than you. And those kind of awesome experiences are not just good personally, I would say that they're good for our society and our culture. So I try to write about those things, I try to talk about those things. I've been on the Today Show 26 or 27 times, not always talking about psychedelics, but almost always educating people about drugs, good and bad, and occasionally educating about psychiatric conditions if a celebrity happened to have a manic episode or something. I'd like to personally thank Charlie Sheen and Lindsay Lohan for selling my book, Weekends at Bellevue, so nicely for me for an extended period of time. Most recently, I was actually given 8 minutes on Kelly and Ryan, which if any of you watch morning TV, like that was a double segment. And first of all, I was pretty excited. Kelly and Ryan is like, it's a Disney company. It is about as mainstream as you're gonna get on a morning show. And what started out as, well, we just want to talk about alternative therapies for depression, ended up at 8 minutes talking about macrodosing, microdosing, ketamine, ibogaine, ayahuasca, as much as I could get in those 8 minutes. So one of the things, it's important, anybody here who's doing media, is the signal-noise ratio really matters. You know, you have to kind of come up with sound bites that hopefully won't be taken out of context. I did a podcast this morning. I had the worst soundbite. I'm like, here's your terrible soundbite. I was talking about how when Sanjay Gupta educated people about CBD and THC through the CNN documentary Weed, I was very involved in that documentary. And I basically taught Sanjay's producer about CBD, and then I spent an hour having an interview with Sanjay explaining about CBD and epilepsy. And they ended up doing a documentary where they showed like 2-year-old babies having seizures. And it really convinced people that CBD could be helpful. You know, these kids got better. Charlotte Figge got better. Charlotte Figge. And you know, you cannot make jokes about seizing babies. And yet, today on a podcast, I managed to, because I was talking about how the issue of veterans needing help is very bipartisan. And there aren't that many things these days that are bipartisan. Firefighters, NYPD, NEPD, police, I'm sorry, I'm New York centric. I worked at Bellevue for 9 years and I interfaced a lot with NYPD, EMS, and a group of people called ESU, which are emergency services units, kind of who police call when they call 911. All those people are traumatized, all those people need help. Veterans are traumatized, they need help. These things are bipartisan, and my terrible soundbite, I'm just so glad to share it for you now.
Yeah, just put it out there again.
I was like, you know, the veterans are like the new seizing babies, basically. So it's terrible, right? It's terrible soundbite. Don't say that. But the idea is that there are certain stories that are sticky that we care about and we pay attention to. We care about sick kids. We care about first responders who are traumatized. We care about veterans who have literally put their lives on the line, I'm not speaking metaphorically, who come back and are in very bad shape. And so these are bipartisan things. So, one more thing I just want to say. So I do a lot of nonfiction books. I talk on TV shows. I'm a talking head on 1 million documentaries. I'm working right now on something scripted, which is a lot harder. It's harder to sell something scripted. I imagine the person I'm working with is not in the audience, but we sort of decided that we would announce it at South by Southwest. If anyone here saw Station 11, I loved Station 11, fell in love with it. Got in touch with the executive producer who's very interested in psychedelics, wants to do a scripted show about psychedelics. His name is Scott Steindorf. We are working together to try to create something scripted. We're not the only team trying to make scripted material about psychedelics. It's another opportunity to educate people, you know, to put the harm reduction messages in there, to try not to be too clickbaity. I'm taking a break.
No, that's good. No, and I think the story. Getting back to stories, there was a time. I'm from Chicago, the Chicago area, and it seems to be it was a bit of a desert in terms of psychedelic knowledge. There's just I don't think most of the universities weren't involved in you know, there weren't too many big names or trials going on at universities. It was pretty quiet, and so I was. It was a while coming out of the psychedelic closet, as they say. I noticed when that moment happened that those stories that I was telling had a big impact. Like, who am I, right? I'm telling, like, whispering to a few people here and there, but I saw how that filtered down. I would recommend different books and different movies to different people. So it was, and this is, you know, it was like started with How to Change Your Mind, and then Fantastic Fungi came out, and I remember bringing my wife to see it, and she wasn't that into the topic of psychedelics at the time. So I was like, it was mushroom. I don't know. It's the Gene Siskel Film Center. Come on, and it had a huge impact. And then your book for women, certain women in my family and friends that I was just like, oh, this is a cool little book. It kind of talks about psychedelics. So I think each story in each film, in each book, in each media appearance can speak to different, has spoken to different people. And yeah.
Well, I think this is an intergenerational movement. When we were growing up, our parents, we're not into psychedelics, and now you see multiple generations that are sharing. A lot of people, I have a motto that many people know, nature provides, I don't. That's been my mantra for 30 years. I'm happy to announce I just received a Drug Enforcement Administration license for psilocybin. I passed my background check. Woohoo! But people oftentimes ask me, well, where I can get psilocybin? I go, I can't possibly tell you, but you have grandkids? How old are they? 16 to 25, they probably know where to find some. But a funny story about intergenerational and with children, my partner and I live on a remote island in Desolation Sound, British Columbia. That's where I spend 95% of my time. It's very strange. It's a beautiful place, but then we get thrust into conferences. Otherwise, we live in extraordinary isolation. And I have a boat, and I was over at a place that is a water access only tiny little village, and I was gassing up my boat at the dock, and I was, walking down the dock, and there was this like 6, 7-year-old girl. She wasn't older than 8 for sure, but 6 to 8 years old, and she's like, I'm walking down the dock, and she's there with her family. They had come in on a little sailboat, and she just stopped in the middle of the dock and looked at me, and she goes, "Are you Paul Stamets?" And I was going, wow, really? I'm in bumfuck nowhere, And I go, yes, and she goes, oh, I was like that. So she ran back to her parents saying, oh, but this is Paul Stamets. And so it was really nice meeting her, and she was really enthused. And so I said, they go, we saw your movie, Fantastic Fungi. And I looked at her, and she was really excited. And I go, what was your favorite part of the movie? And she goes, I like the part when the monkeys ate the mushrooms. A little twinkle with the parents' eyes going, okay, this is the next generation. But I do think it's multi-generational, and I say this with some chagrin and sadness. Before my father died, he asked to trip on psilocybin mushrooms with me. And Alexander Smith, who would like Daniel Stuntz, was one of my great mentors, he was the father of American mycology, published many new species of psilocybin mushrooms, many monographs, University of Michigan. And he also asked me to trip with him on psilocybin mushrooms. I mean, these are two very important men and, literally father figures in my life. And with both of them, I asked the same question. And I said, okay, we could do this. This can profoundly change you. Helen, Alexander Smith's wife, she was also a renowned mycologist. I asked her, and I asked my father's wife, will you also, take these psilocybin mushrooms with us? And both of them said no. They wouldn't do it. And I said, well, I respectfully decline. I cannot give you psilocybin mushrooms, go on a journey with you, and at the end of your life, they're in their 70s, you'll have such a profound experience that I didn't want to drive a wedge in your relationship. And this is where I think therapists and psychiatrists are so important to create safe guardrails, because these are powerful medicines. But what happens afterwards? You do this big, extraordinary journey, and then I disappear, right? And they're left holding the pieces. I didn't live with my father. I just on vacation. I'd go away in 2 days. Alexander Smith, I'd go away the next day. And then he would have to be trying to tell Helen or their partners something that they couldn't fathom. And this is, I think, a really serious, question that we all face. These are such powerful medicines. What happens afterwards? Are you there for them? Are you skilled enough to help them process? And I think this is really, really important. It's not the journey itself, it's the path of the journey, and subsequently that you need to come to terms and be able to talk this out. So in the audience here, we have a giant in the Canadian psychedelic movement, and it's Dr. Pam Crisco. And she is part of the Canadian Psychedelic Association and a group called Roots to Thrive. They're doing group therapy, end of life, despair, distress, anxiety, mostly stage 4 diagnosed patients, with Canadian government approval with high doses of psilocybin. Now this, I think, is a model, and it's being replicated, so I want to give her a lot of credit. She's in the front row here, and many. But what they have pioneered, which is really good, and with indigenous input, et cetera, is that because this group of 8 people, and they have 8, support people, physicians, other people who are skilled in this, indigenous people as well, elders, but because they have a common, malady or they have a death, sentence. The fact they all share this sort of like, oh my gosh, we're doomed to die very soon, because they could come together and prepare over several weeks, and then they shared this journey together, they became a community of people who could talk to each other when the other people weren't available, to build bridges and bonds, and to be able to have a common destiny that you shared together in this journey, rather than being alone, which is what my father and Alexander Smith would have faced. What a contrast. And so I think this idea of people coming together, not like going to Costa Rica or Jamaica and you're, Cusco, Peru or something like this, and you walk in and you pay your fee and you sit down with strangers. I think that's a formula for disaster. Because one person have a bad trip will traumatize everybody in the group, and they'll go, WTF, we didn't sign up for this, they're making my trip really challenging. So I think having this shared common purpose, I think that model has extraordinarily powerful potential. So Dr. Pram Crisco, thank you very much for your leadership. You're really doing something quite amazing, and they're publishing on this as well. So thank you.
And she'll be on a panel here tomorrow at 2:30 with me and Natalie Gakason and Xiao Hu, which is a women in the psychedelic ecosphere who want to talk about psychedelics for women, basically. But men are allowed.
Funny story. Also at 2:30 is the Business of Psychedelics 2.0 at the same time. So it's okay. Either you want to I don't know. If you go to
Pink
mine,
team or blue team.
you will be canceled. You will be canceled if you go to mine. You will be canceled. And if you go to
Pink pill or
Julie's,
blue pill, right?
you'll learn a lot too.
If you're interested in capitalism, whatever. But we're going to be talking about actual clinical things. So
That's cute.
No, sorry, Dan, but I think it's time for women to take leadership. So I just think this is the time for women to step forward.
I self-cancel. Yeah, I self-cancel. Paul, right. I wanted to make sure that at some point I canceled myself. That's good.
I have to say, Paul has been a tremendous ally to the women. There was a manel a few years ago, just as COVID was starting. The guys didn't realize there was like 8 or 9 guys on a panel at a consciousness conference, and I'm not the kind of person I'm just quiet and unassuming. I don't usually make trouble. But I emailed a few of them because they were friends of mine, because it was like Paul Stamets and Andy Weil, and I just emailed a few of them, and I'm like, you guys, did anybody notice that this is a total manel? And the first person who responded, Paul was like, oh my God, no, this is terrible. We have to change this. I'm going to bow out. We need more women. You were right there front and center, and I really appreciate that.
And then they added Melania Trump, and that was it, right? That was the whole thing.
Then COVID came, and it got online, and the rest of the
thanks.
story.
I just want to make sure at some point I stepped into a big pile of shit for myself, and I'm glad I did. No, either panel is going to be great. Go to hers. You can watch mine another time. Can we just do this really quick? Paul, a little break because it has to do with movies. We don't have to go off on a big thing on it, but I'm just curious. You are a lieutenant commander, is that correct? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so chicken or egg question. Did Star Trek Discovery name a character after you because you had started exploring astromycology, or was the idea for astromycology inspired by Star Trek? I'm just curious.
Actually, I'm very happy to answer that, and I have actually an add-on as well. I was up in my remote island cabin, and CBS arranged a group call, and 12 of the writers from Star Trek Discovery literally said, Paul, we're in the dungeon. We're supposed to write the next Star Trek. We don't have the foggiest thing what to do. Do you have any ideas? And I said, wow, my cabin is built in the shape of Star Trek Enterprise. The rafters are gills of mushrooms, right? And it's 3 hexagons in tribute to bees, and the big hexagon, 36 feet out, and the 2 24s are shaped like a starship. So I'm going, you've got to be kidding, right? And so I said, turn on your tape recorders, let me rip. And so I talked about mycelium, the organization of dark matter, computer, internet, neurons, all conform to this web-like structure, this interlacing networks. And I told them about, I believe that we'll find fungi throughout the universe. And I said, I gave them this whole rap, and I said, rather than, going into hyperdrive and you see all the stars flash by you, if you can tap into the mycelial universe, you can instantaneously jump anywhere in the universe. So this is the advantage, because the organization of dark matter, is this network that permeates throughout the entire universe. And so, they go, oh my, that's great. And then towards the end, I go, I always wanted to, I said, you can have the ideas for free. I don't want any acknowledgement. I don't want anything. I'm a Star Trek fan. And what I love about Star Trek is you set the stage on a model for future generations of tolerance, diversity, the prime directive, cooperation, bringing people together. This is a sacred duty that science fiction becomes science fact. You can lead people like myself. I was hugely impressionable about the tolerance of diversity, et cetera. And then I blurted out, I always wanted to be the first astromycologist. They go, astromycologist? Astromycologist, we could use this. And then a little bit of the background, then 2 weeks before it came out, they go, we better call Paul. And they called Paul, and they go, hey, because I signed a contract, signed my life away. They could do anything with my name. No money, no compensation. They said, your character, Anthony Rapp, do you mind that he's gay? You're asking me now, right? I said, are you kidding? That's a badge of honor. I have all my gay friends. I can tell them that I've come out of the closet, right? So then to finish the story, there's the first 3 episodes showed, and the astromycologist Paul Stamets is a total asshole. So my friends call me up on, this is just so damaging to your career and your reputation. So I call them up going, WTF? What's going on? They go, hold on. So I told them about the mycelial spore drive, beneath the creation of this chamber that you can fuse with the mycelium. So the astromycologist Stamets goes into the mycelial spore drive and then bonds with blue glowing mycelium. And then after that encounter, he comes out a really nice person.
That's great.
So we have two. So I came out of the psychedelic closet. Paul came out of a different closet. Julie, any closets you want to come out of?
I was going to make the Star Trek sound when you said you came out of the closet, but I didn't. Are there any closets I want to come out? Is that your question for me, moderator? Because
I'm scared. No,
I feel like I already have.
Yeah.
I mean, I've outed myself as a cannabis user, as somebody who tried MDMA. I don't know, psychedelic parenting. I mean, I feel like I've outed myself as much as I possibly can.
Oh, we'll work on that.
What can I tell you?
Okay, this is somewhere between. This is a question. This is a good Julie and Paul dual question here, because my first experience was with age. I'm 50, so this was at age 45. It was with MDMA. I thought it was gonna be with mushrooms. I thought it was gonna be with psilocybin for a while, because I done all my research and I'm an adult and I'm like, well, this is it's non-toxic. You can take as much as you want. I read Michael Pollan's book. It was with MDMA, and it was the luckiest break I ever had. And I say that because I had an incredibly profound experience with MDMA that led me to be able to be, I guess, brave enough to go down the mushroom journey. I have a very challenging relationship with mushrooms. They say, like, you have a relationship with the medicine. It's a troubled relationship. Like, I'm still working on it. What advice do you? There's this kind of, everyone's jumping into psilocybin right away, and that I see, and they're doing giant doses, and they are having challenging experiences. Where do you go with that? Because there's a lot of dogma. You have to start here, then you do this, or you have to do that, and I think it's different for everyone. But I'm curious where you're at with that, and where you're at with that. You're a little biased, and I want to know.
This is what I do for a living. I mean, I do consultations with people who, have a lot of questions. Should I microdose? Should I macrodose? What about ketamine? What about ayahuasca? What makes sense for me? Should I do MDMA first? Some people mix. I have all kinds of opinions, and I don't think I can get into all of it now. I mean, my personal bias is that I think it's nice to start with MDMA because it's a little more of a subtle shift, and it's pretty controllable. And you can kind of get a lay of the land and figure out where the landmines are, where are the areas you need to work on. And, one of the metaphors I use with MDMA is it's like a house with all the lights on, all the doors unlocked. It's kind of up to you what closet you want to go into, what bed you want to look under, but you sort of feel competent and confident enough to do some exploring. But you're going to hit some places where you're like, oh, that's too big, and I don't know if I can do that, which means you come back to it, maybe another MDMA session, or maybe you have psilocybin the second time. But the biggest issue now is that people are on psych meds. And it's really hard to advise people. It's hard to get off psych meds. It's hard to get off antidepressants. In case you haven't heard that, I will tell you. So, and you can microdose even if you're on psych meds. You can have ketamine if you're on psych meds, but ayahuasca is not going to really be possible if you're on most standard psychiatric medicines. MDMA also often won't work depending on what meds you're on. And then psilocybin's a little more complicated. But this issue of drug interactions is something that really matters to me. It is one of the risks, because there are very few medical risks, but if you're on these meds, then you mix with these drugs, that's going to be a risk. So the biggest risk is also just our drug policy creates risk, right? We don't know what we're getting, the drug substitution, counterfeit. I mean, we really are having a crisis, obviously, now with sort of the poisoning of the drug supply. So that's a big risk. But our drug policy creates some of these risks. And then some of the risks are just because, as I love to say, people are gonna people. There, unfortunately, is abuse, doctors abuse their patients, dentists abuse their patients, chiropractors abuse their clients, the priests abuse their confessioners, there's abuse in the military. I mean, it's everywhere. And it turns out is also not only in the underground psychedelic scene, but it's also in the clinical research psychedelic scene and in the retreat scene. And Nine Perfect Strangers really did a bad job educating about consent, if nothing else. Let's just say that was a little problematic. So, I want there to be consultants on these shows. If I can't personally be involved, I would love to read a script and say, hey, this is dangerous, this doesn't make sense. Let's make sure that we educate people about screening and preparation and integration afterwards. And these are all things everybody needs to understand better. And keep in mind, all the clinical research, people are screened like crazy. If you have any history of a manic episode, or if you've ever been psychotic, or if you have a first-degree relative who's ever had a manic episode or been psychotic, you can't be in that study. So after the studies and after the FDA approval, when it's more available, and there's going to be less screening, I'm afraid, and unfortunately probably trying to run more people at once, because the two clinician, one participant model really isn't going to be cost effective. So there are going to be a lot of bumps in the road, and I think it's reasonable that we prepare for them.
If the pendulum swings so far that way, right? In terms of warning and letting people know about the harms. That's part of getting back to the movies and being on Joe Rogan and all that, is the messaging. Where do you go with that?
Well, what I will want to say for the record, you should obey the law. The challenge that you face is, do you obey state law or federal law? And those states that are legalized, like Colorado. And so in Oregon, but we have, through our microdose.me study, and doctors are collecting hundreds and hundreds of case reports where people have gotten off their antidepressive medicines with microdosing. And so attentive physicians are always looking for these, the N of 1 studies, one of these remarkable breakthroughs that are not conventional, and they end up documenting it. There's actually journals, it was basically on best outcome cases, where they were given a diagnosis for which there was no apparent remedy, and then they stumbled upon something. So when you start getting hundreds and hundreds of these case reports, then clinicians wake up. They begin to looking at this saying, wow, there is something happening here. We need to study it. And so I think that's good. You know, with this grassroots movement is populating databases, giving information that physicians otherwise would not see if they only saw 100 patients a month, and you've got 100,000 people reporting. Now you're starting to see something, and then clinicians pay attention for this. For people who were not there yesterday, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, there's 120 clinical trials registered on psilocybin at clinicaltrials.gov. That's extraordinary. There was one back in 1999, right?
Yeah.
So that means that the people are paying attention to this. There is a lot of hype and high expectation, but as more of these clinical trials are published, it's amazing to me that many of these high expectations, which seem to be extraordinary or even over-exaggerated, are now become substantiated. Alcohol use disorder, opioid use disorder, kicking tobacco. I mean, these are three different types of drugs, three different types of receptors, and yet is fundamentally changing the neurological health of these addicts. So the chorus of data is actually substantiating increasingly these extraordinary claims that heretofore were looked upon as being exaggerations, and it's looking more and more real.
Yep.
On the other hand, people who have treatment-resistant depression, who've tried all these medicines and TMS and all these other things, and they come to psychedelics, and it's their sort of last hope, and of course this is going to work. Everybody says this work, and then for whatever reason it doesn't work for them. Those people are in a pretty bad state, and they are few and far between. But it does happen. But there's, I email you every once in a while about this. Like, there's some people who just don't respond to mushrooms. God knows. If Paul doesn't know, God knows why some people aren't responding to mushrooms. And we do know, I published a paper about people who'd been on SSRIs for a long time, and when they came off of SSRIs to do an MDMA study, the people who were never on SSRIs had a big, robust response to MDMA. The people who had been on SSRIs who had come off had less of a response. I don't know if that's the case with mushrooms or not. I've talked to some underground people who feel like the people who've been on SSRIs for decades don't have a robust response to mushrooms even if they come off. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that I definitely know about people who came off their meds to have these experiences. It wasn't what I just talked to an underground person recently who got sort of some negative feedback from the person who complained, I didn't get enlightened, Thought I was gonna get enlightened. And, it's not just a one and done. There's this whole process, and you may have to do it a couple times, and you need a lot of support between, and you need a lot of support after, as you said.
Yep.
It's really this whole, as much as people talk about integration, they throw this word around, it's the after that really matters.
Well, there's also a fundamental flaw, unfortunately, with clinical trials, and it's extraordinary to me that more clinicians have not addressed this early on, and increasingly they are. It's the placebo-blind double control.
Right.
And the one group's supposed to get a placebo, and the other group gets a high dose of psilocybin. There's a great cartoon, many of you have seen it. I just love it. And the person are sitting in a patient group, there are 6 of them sitting in their chair, and the other 6 are dancing around, and the person goes, well, I guess we're in the placebo group. And this is actually an ethical issue, because you're treating somebody with treatment-resistant depression. This is the end of the line for them. Nothing has worked. They're hoping they get psilocybin. Well, what's the ethical responsibility of the clinicians that are exacerbating their depression? They thought they were going to get psilocybin. They get a placebo, and then they use that as a baseline for the comparison of the people who have an improvement. I mean, it's really fundamentally flawed, and there's 25 to 30 of these clinical trials that are using inactive placebos in contrast to high doses. I mean, this is just scientifically impugnable, and I don't know how they got past the IRB boards on this. And it's the hubris of scientists, especially scientists who have not tripped, right? Who they looked at this as some other type of medicine that they think they're the know-it-alls in designing clinical trials. And then I think it's a serious, I would take every clinical trial with treatment-resistant or major depressive disorder that used a high dose of psilocybin with a placebo and look at them just very circumspectively as being inflating their data because of the contrast. And what's the moral responsibility
Right.
of causing these people to be more depressed because they were deselected?
It's true that in some psilocybin studies, the only suicidality is really in the placebo group. I just said group. In the placebo group. It's incredibly disappointing, right? And when people ask me about whether they should try to find a study or try to go to somebody underground, and we talk about all the risks and benefits of that, I talk about the fact that most clinical studies is a 50-50 chance you're going to get the medicine. So you have to be willing, you're really doing it for science. You can't do it for you. And I've been arguing against placebo in this forever, and I'm in the process of helping to design a study, very early stages, of using MDMA in the treatment of people with schizophrenia. I refuse to have a placebo in that group. First of all, people with schizophrenia are sometimes pretty paranoid. I don't want to play games. Who's got the button? They just... So I think what we're going to do is everybody's going to go through with placebo first so they get the lay of the land and understand how it works, and the second time they will get active drug. And we'll just know it. And it's okay because you do know it. I mean, unless you're going to put dilating eye drops in every person, which would be one way. I've been talking about mydriatic drops forever because to me it's a very easy, cheap way to at least make everyone look like they're tripping. Who's in the study.
Can you explain that? I'm not quite familiar
It's
with it.
an eye drop that dilates your pupils, so you get the big basketball pupils that one may get when they're taking a
Well, that's good
psychedelic.
for the doctors looking at pupils.
It would at least
but
it would at least help the doctors think everybody was tripping, but also when you get that much light in, things look a little trippy. So it's something. Have you ever not gotten your pupils dilated for eye exam? Paul, you need to go to the eye doctor. It does.
Believe me,
It's a little reminiscent of MDMA or psilocybin when you get that kind of increased light coming in.
Yes, but this is like even when people look at fractals and geometrical patterns, it's just not. It's like VR. VR is a wonderful toy. Again, technology getting ahead of itself. But with VR, that won't make you have the feeling of unanimity that wells up inside of you when you're tripping, and you feel this one with the universe. It's not just fractals and geometrical patterns and visual effects. It's something that's deep inside of your core that wells up, and that is so different than what a VR experience can give. And so these, again, clinicians are using VR who think it's, oh yeah, we can induce a psychoactive experience. Well, you can get part of the way there, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah, and also a lot of people don't have visuals or aren't very visually oriented. There's something called aphantasia that a lot more people have than we realize, and it's some people, they can close their eyes and image, they can visualize their mother's face or what they ate yesterday or something. Other people, when they close their eyes to visualize, it's just black. That's called aphantasia. And so a lot of people with aphantasia don't have a lot of visuals anyway. So if they're just focusing on the pretty colors, they're certainly missing.
I'm so neurotic. I think you just gave me aphantasia. Like I've been wondering why. But for me, my first.
Well,
go ahead. Go.
This is by visual. This is a great short story. Terrence McKenna and Kristen Ratch and Eduardo Luna and I were in Palenque, and we went to the ruins, and we had a bunch of cubensis, and for some friggin' reason, not a single one of us had a flashlight. We went to the ruins of Palenque, and we all ate a whole bunch of cubensis together. I mean, it was great. What a great group, right? And we're walking back to Chongca, the resort there. It was about 2 miles away, and we took the jungle trail. Bad idea. And we end up, and halfway through, I mean, it is pitch black. We cannot, it's the type of trail walking where you're feeling with your feet, whether you're on the solid ground or you're off the path. And we're all staying close together going, this is crazy. And I go, wait, I have my Nikon camera. I have a flash. I can flash ahead and we can see the trail. And so I said, wait. So I turn on my flash, the battery goes up and it says, okay, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, flash. All of us going, oh my God, that was incredible. So we stopped in the trail. We all put the 8 of us around in front of my flash. I go, here we go. 1, 2, 3. And we were just like, oh, this is the greatest shamanic tool ever,
I would want to put one harm reduction message in here. This is because I think we're actually videoing this session, so hopefully we're gonna have to do. There may be some editing. We'll see what happens. No. I'm with yeah.
Nothing I said
No, I got you.
was illegal.
No. It's perfect. I'm going somewhere else here. Ready?
Okay.
All right. The story that you've told, how you addressed your stammer, when you were younger. It's a beautiful story. And in fact, before the session, there was someone that came up to us in the green room and shared his personal story of having a stammer and was thanking you. And you took some time to talk to him, and it was very, very meaningful. It reminded me of why what gets me excited about being in this field and in this space. But let me tell you something. That tree, going up in the tree, I have 4 boys, and I'm very honest with them about trivia. I just want to clarify once and for all. Are you ready for this? The tree, when you went up in the tree with the lightning storm, it was only like 3 feet off the ground, right? I mean, the branch was like right here, right? I just want to make sure.
No, it was 50,
right.
60 feet up. It was the tallest tree. And
Jonah, you know what we're editing here? Yeah.
But
yeah.
Since you brought up the tree
Yep.
and lightning, I want to share an epiphany with all of you. And my partner is very much a part of this experience because of this narrative. Okay, this is throughout the world, lightning strikes are associated with mushrooms formations. In the northern plains, First Nations, the white circles around the teepees are puffballs associated with lightning strikes. In Ireland, in Europe, in Mesoamerica, all over the world, in Japan, in Russia, lightning is thought to stimulate mushrooms to form. Well, there was a group in Japan that found 50 to 100,000 volts of electricity, 1/10,000,000th of a burst, doubled the production of shiitake mushrooms. So lightning was proven, electricity pulses stimulate mushrooms. Okay, we carry that forward, and I'm thinking, and I'm tripping, and I'm thinking about the 8 miles of mycelium, underneath, in a single cubic inch of soil. Every footprint you take, you're on 300 miles of mycelium. And I think after hundreds of millions of years of evolution, nature is smart, mycelium is smart, organisms are smart. If there's a lightning strike on the horizon, the flash of light, and you hear thunder. Well, mycelium produces mushrooms in response to 4 stimuli. Rain, of course, associated with drop in temperature. Mycelium wicks up, exhales carbon dioxide, inhales oxygen, and light. So those are 4 primary stimuli. So I thought to myself, well, wait, with all these fibers of mycelium all over the ground, lightning strike in the distance followed by sound, low sound frequencies, wouldn't it awaken the mycelium? The mycelium's like strings on a piano, strings on a guitar. They're vibrating from these waves. That would alert the mycelium that rain is coming. And if the rain is coming, the mycelium wakens up to be able to absorb the moisture. It's wicking. It understands that on the horizon, on the event horizon, there's water coming. Well, moreover, think about this with drum circles, with people celebrating the birth of a child, the death of an elder, the harvest of food. The mycelium is listening. And when people come together tribally and celebrate outside in nature with drumming and singing and toning, I believe the mycelium is sentient. It knows and is stimulated by these vibrations, which means the mycelium will grow, channeling more nutrients to the plants, to creating more herbs, more vegetables, more fruits. And that the mycelium is actually in presence, as a prescience of being that's surrounding us all the time. And I thought, oh my God, these lenses of mycelium everywhere are sound sensitive. They're not only responding to the impact of your footprints, not only responding to lightning, but to our voices, to toning. And I think that's really amazing.
That is, thank you. What's that? Yeah. I'm getting. Thank you, by the way. That's beautiful. I have a gift for the panelists. Why? Because it's fun to give gifts to the panelists. I was searching for something mushroom related. I had something really cool that I'm gonna tell you about later, but it's too expensive. You may have to buy it on your own, but it's really cool. Seriously, no, but I have a gift for the panelists, and it is a bronze. I had to write this down. Garuda opium weight. This is not a shameless plug for somebody's gallery who I'm very related to, but it's very cool. It's from Southeast Asia. It's roughly 150 years old, and they were used to measure quantities of opium. Okay, so it's kind of a harm reduction sort of thing, right? I don't know how much it weighs, but it's pretty cool. I would still get your drug testing kits from Dance Safe if you are doing that, and probably buy a good scale. But I thought this was pretty cool, and one for each of you. And when you use it, just don't, like, whatever it is, just make sure it's legal, and that you've talked to your doctor. But I want to thank both of you really for your time and your stories and sharing your stories. It's what inspired me to get in this space. Changed my life. I'm hoping that the work we're doing can do the same for many others, and it's you guys that made it happen.
I just want to remind you, if anybody wants, I'm going to be at the bookstore starting now, basically signing copies of Good Chemistry, because I got to run. Sorry I can't chat, but I can chat over there.
And I'm doing a book signing tomorrow at 1 o'clock at the Host Defense booth downstairs. So thank you all.
It has come down to this. One ball, one strike, $1 million.
And the loser gets nothing.